Good. No cancer.
Huh?
No cancer.
Well, if he made it to his age without having GERDs, that's amazing. Everybody's got it now. We had to raise the back of our bed up. In the back, I told you, it's up like that.
The one for the whole,
Huh?
the whole bed, or
No, just the
just
back.
your pillow?
Just the back.
Okay, I'd like to call the regular city commission meeting of January 4th, 2022 to order. And start by asking all of you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Start with the roll call. Mayor Pro Tem Elder.
Present.
Commissioner Jenks.
Present.
Commissioner Olsman.
Present.
Commissioner Rozelle.
Present.
Mayor Paul, present. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Seconded.
Any comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Communications. I believe we have any. Moving on to elected officials' remarks. I know I saw our county commissioner here, Charlie Cavell. Charlie, do you have any comments this evening?
Hey everybody, I'll make them brief. I'm Charlie Cavell, our county commissioner. As some of you may know, Oakland County is running the COVID response for our community. So just a quick update. We have 134 active cases here in Huntington Woods of COVID. If you have any questions or would like to learn more or find any resources about testing, please call Oakland County Health Department at 800-848-5533, or feel free to reach out to me, call, text anytime, 248-807-4347. That's 807-4347. And then the last thing I wanted to say is, hopefully you all have gotten or will be getting an email from the county about something I'm really proud of that I worked on with the Republican caucus on getting done, which is a $2.4 million water sewer infrastructure grant for local communities. So Huntington Woods should definitely apply and reach out anytime if you all want more info. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. We have one other elected official with us this evening, but I told our U.S. Representative Andy Levin that we'd give him a chance to speak after our first proclamation here. So I'm going to move to that first. It's always a fun night when we have proclamations, and we have 3 of them this evening. So I'm going to start the first one, handing it off to Commissioner Jules Olsman, who was very instrumental in the writing of this particular proclamation, and have him read that for us. Oh, I missed.
We're good.
Oh, yeah, we forgot our state rep
Oh, and our state senator.
and senator. Wow. 2 months in a row. That's why we forgot.
We'll be brief. We'll just come to say hi. My name is Regina Weiss. I'm the state senator for the 27th district, which includes the community of Huntington Woods, as well as Berkeley, Oak Park, Royal Oak Township, Pleasant Ridge, Ferndale, and Hazel Park.
Jeremy Moss, state senator for here and other places.
Yes, and all I'll say is that if, just a reminder that if anyone ever needs any support, to please reach out to our offices. If you need support with unemployment or any other issues that come up, the best way to get in touch with me is to email my office. It's reginaweiss@house.mi.gov.
And you can reach me at senatormoss.com. We gave a more robust presentation of some of the things that we're working on at the last commission meeting, and we're just excited here to also support the proclamation from the city to a very deserving honoree.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any way, Senator, we could get the map redrawn so you could still represent our fine city in the years to come?
I'm grieving this loss.
As are we, Senator,
Yes,
as are
and,
we.
And there will be more information, I think, as the year progresses. But yes, the map has been redrawn. As you may know, I'm a Southfield resident. Southfield and Huntington Woods have been together in a Senate district since 2002, I think. And unfortunately, the redrawing of the lines puts Huntington Woods in one district, takes Southfield and puts it in another district. I am still here in service to this community until December 31st of this year, and I'm very, very, very saddened that it is not in this district, and that all of the many meaningful and lasting connections that I've made in this community just won't come with me to the next district, but they'll still remain, and we'll make sure that this community has great representation in the state Senate.
Thank you.
Senator, you can always move to Huntington Woods.
You're right, I could.
And
Hey,
change the
there's already a primary going on here. I don't want to add to that.
I will say that the new 6th district in the House, Huntington Woods was very fortunate to be one of the very few communities that was kept wholly within one House district, and it's in the 6th district, and I am running to represent it.
Yes, yes.
So hopefully I will continue to be your state rep moving forward.
Of course you will.
I just wanted to say one thing. At the December meeting, we brought up this topic to you about municipalities having no ability to directly contact Comcast, even in the event of an emergency, a one-on-one person. And I wrote a letter to this new community relations person that they just recently appointed. I believe his last name is Miller. And I sent him a letter and an email, and he called me and he said he had heard from both of you prior to that, and that they are going to establish a real person, that if a municipality has a reason to contact Comcast, they don't have to sit on an automated line trying to explain to whatever they call it, Brian Fenster, a bot or something that you're talking to, why you want to talk to somebody from Comcast, even if it has to do with down lines or issues like that. So I just want to point out how responsive you were to that and how quickly they responded to that as well. So, and I've invited Mr. Miller to come and participate at a future meeting so he can hear from his customers in Huntington Woods how pleased they are by Comcast. So this will give everybody a chance to rag right at one time against Comcast simultaneously. But I do appreciate your moving so quickly on it. It paid off. Thank you.
Good, we're glad.
Glad to hear it. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. You're back on.
I'm back on. So, Mr. Fenster, would you care to come up, at least be up in the front here with your family so we can do this presentation? So if there's anybody here, if you've been living in a cave for the last year who doesn't know Danny Fenster, the first citizen of Huntington Woods, we're here tonight as a city to honor him and his family, and to express our gratitude for the very happy ending of what could have been a very unhappy situation for all of us. So we have a proclamation tonight from the City of Huntington Woods Commission. Whereas Danny Fenster, a proud son and native of Huntington Woods, was wrongfully arrested and imprisoned by the military government of Myanmar from May 24th through November 15th, 2021, for the sole crime of being a journalist and the managing editor of Frontier Myanmar, and whereas Danny Fenster sought only to contribute to the well-being of the citizens of Myanmar and the world by editing stories concerning the military coup which toppled Myanmar's democratic government in February 2021. Whereas a vigorous free press and dedicated journalists are essential to the preservation and survival of democracy throughout the world. And whereas Danny Fenster, his wife Juliana Silva, his brother Brian, and their parents Rose and Buddy Fenster, and the extended Fenster, Racy, and Kurzweil families all demonstrated incredible courage, fortitude, and determination to the world during this tense ordeal. Whereas the Huntington Woods City Commission further recognizes the efforts of Governor Bill Richardson, Representative Andy Levin, U.S. Senators Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters, State Senator Jeremy Moss, and State Representative Regina Weiss, and other public officials who worked diligently to assure the safe release of Danny Fenster from his unlawful detention in Myanmar. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City of Huntington Woods hereby expresses its full appreciation to Danny Fenster for his courage and accomplishments as a journalist and for the strength and determination that he and his family displayed over a very difficult 6-month period of time. Proclaimed this resolution by the Huntington Woods City Commission. Robert F. Paul, III, Mayor. It's a hell of a way to get a proclamation.
It's on. Yep.
Okay, there you go. You want an opportunity to speak to your city?
Yeah, just thank you, everybody. You know, I've said before, but it's just an incredible community to come home to and to see the support at everybody's house, on everyone's front lawn. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. And Representative Levin, Congressman Levin, where did he go? There he is. Never miss an opportunity for an open mic. Remember that. Now, I will say this about our congressman, that I did speak to Senator Stabenow's office, and I invited her. I also invited Senator Peters to participate, and Senator Stabenow's response was, this should be Andy Levin's opportunity because he was instrumentally involved in this successful event. Occurrence.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Jules, and thanks for inviting me. Thanks to the whole incredible commission of this fantastic city. You know, Danny, I actually grew up in Berkeley, so I mostly kind of came down here in high school and got in trouble, so whenever I come here. But seriously, I just want to, first of all, make a couple other congratulations. Great job to the city on hiring Chris Wilson as your next city manager. I got a chance to work with him as village manager, if that's the right word, in Beverly Hills, and he did an amazing job there, so that'll be great going forward. And Ann Hage is being honored. Okay, so I got 2 bills passed through Congress and signed by the President of the United States this year. One was to prevent burning of PFAS chemicals, which is super important for our health. The other one was the Library Stabilization Fund, the largest single funding of public libraries in the history of our country. And I got to tell you, these librarians, you and your brethren and sistren or whatever, are unbelievable advocates, and we all need to stand up for our public libraries, for the role they play, for our kids, but for our adults, for workers, for people who need telehealth, so many different things. So, all right, but Danny, I got to tell you, first of all, your family, Buddy and Rose and Brian, Kara, and your cousins, the effort that they put into this, the kind of creativity, determination, brilliance, it was something like I've never seen, and I've had to be involved in other, situations like this. But then this community, so just here's my symbol of it to you, Danny. Did you ever go to the parade here, the 4th of July parade? So I go every year. I used to come to make sure my dad was okay, for many years, but now I still obviously come every year. I have never been in a parade situation. I go to Clawson, right? St. Clair Shores, Royal Oak, whatever. I have never been, and I don't think I ever will be in a situation like this. this summer here, and people were thanking me for trying to help you, but they were saying, this is your responsibility. I mean, you were still in that damn prison, right? And they were like, you have to get him out of there. And the whole city, like 100 people said that to me in that parade. And the way, so you give a proclamation, what Danny went through and how you're here so in great shape, and we're just so happy to see you. But the whole city deserves a huge round of applause for what you did. So that's it. I won't give you a report on Congress. We're fighting to get things done despite the United States Senate. We have passed some amazing bills, all this money that we've sent so you can do, testing and you can do, COVID response and in the schools. And if we can get the state legislature, some of their Republican partners to work with the governor to appropriate the dang money, there's still hundreds of millions of dollars sitting there. But we're really pushing forward. And next year, obviously I represent Huntington Woods now. I'll be having the honor to run in the new 11th district, and still, hopefully, if I can prevail, represent Huntington Woods. It's something I really love doing, and it's a great honor to be here with you tonight to honor Danny. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our second proclamation, as Congressman Levin hinted to, is honoring our library director, Ann Haig. Whereas Ann Haig, known as many as Miss Ann, started her career as a clerk at the Huntington Woods Library in 1988. She became the Youth Services Librarian in 1990, maintaining a warm relationship with residents and children for years of story hours. She succeeded in becoming the library director in September of 2007. And whereas Ann obtained her undergraduate degree from James Madison College at Michigan State University, her master's in library science from Wayne State University, as well as her specialized library certification from the Library of Michigan. Whereas Ann has been an active member of our library cooperative, the Library Network, as a member of the steering committee from 2011 to 2013, and a member of the Shared System Users Group from 2014 to present, representing smaller libraries. Whereas she chaired both in 2000 and 2002 the auction committee for the Michigan Library Association. Whereas her career at the City of Huntington Woods Library included substantial expansion of the children's programming, including the addition of story times for various age groups and other special programs, including several preschool and volunteer fairs. And whereas Ann, who worked collaboratively and tirelessly with the Huntington Woods residents, Huntington Woods Recreation Center on programming and maintained a positive relationship with the city's contract community of Pleasant Ridge. She further continued a good working relationship with the Library Advisory Board and the Friends of the Huntington Woods Library. Whereas under her leadership, the Woods Gallery has been further developed and now hosts various art shows several times a year. And whereas her operational experience, excellent taste, and tenacity were instrumental in the complete renovation of the entire lower level of the library, including the Woods Gallery, the 3 community meeting rooms, and the kitchen following the major citywide flood. And where Ann is well respected by her staff and is considered a consummate leader in her ability to listen, mentor, and consider staff thoughts and opinions when making library decisions. Whereas Ann proudly raised 3 children during her time at the City of Huntington Woods, her eldest, Joe, is a cloud engineer at Ford Motor Company. Her youngest son, Jacob, is a software engineer for META, formerly Facebook, living in Seattle, Washington. And her youngest, Meredith, is a sophomore at Michigan State University, studying supply chain management. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that on behalf of the residents of Huntington Woods, the many patrons of the library, and the entire city staff Ann worked with over her 31-plus years of dedicated service, I, as mayor, and the members of the City Commission express our sincerest thanks and best wishes to Ann in her retirement and future endeavors. Proclaimed by resolution of the City of Huntington Woods, January 4th, 2022, and signed by the mayor. You want to say anything?
Good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Pleasure working for the city.
All right, next up. That proclamation was so long I could hardly read that. There's that type font, and I don't know what it was. This proclamation is honoring our swim coach, Sean Peters. I had the honor many years ago on the 4th of July of giving Sean Peters the Employee of the Year award. And in all the years I've sat up there on that stage and listened to all the awards, that was the biggest crowd and the loudest applause I'd ever seen at the 4th of July. And that was, I don't know, how many years ago, Sean? So it's an honor once again to give you another proclamation. Whereas Sean Peters in 1992 was an undergraduate student swim team co-captain at Oakland University, where he competed as well as assisted other swimmers with their swim techniques. He was noted then for his patience, kindness, and excellent work ethic. And whereas in 1994, the fledgling Huntington Woods Aquatics Club Hurricanes was about to lose city support and discontinue membership in the NSSL. In response, a parent board was formed to reconfigure operations of the program, including the hiring of a new head coach. Young Sean Peters just graduated from Oakland University, applied for the job, and was given the opportunity based on his well-known capabilities as a swimmer and solid training methods and techniques. Whereas he has continued as the coach for HUWAC for over 25 years, where he coached and mentored many generations of little tropical storms and hurricanes, turning a once-dying program into one of the most sought-after summer programs in our parks and recreation programming. Sean is still loved by both swimmers and parents alike. His positive leadership and ability to nurture a hurricane's individual development has resulted in a swim culture centered on fun, inclusivity, and fostering the love of swimming in our young athletes. He has undeniably become the most successful coach in Huntington Woods history and an indispensable part of our community. Whereas Sean also serves as the head swim coach for Wayne State University for over 25 years and has recently been recognized as one of the top 100 greatest swimming and diving coaches by the College Swimming and Diving Coaches Association. And whereas he has guided the WSU Warriors to 20 GLAC championships, 1 national championship, 40 individual national championships, 14 national championship relays, and has coached 377 academic all-GLAC athletes. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the members of the City Commission, city staff, tropical storm and hurricane families, and their swimmers recognize and thank Coach Peters for being an exemplary community leader, an example of professionalism within the HUWAC program. Proclaimed by resolution of the City Commission, January 4th, 2022.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you all. Certainly, this is a truly humbling day for me, and I can't say enough how much I appreciate each one of you taking time out to be here with my hurricane family in the back there. I love you all so much. You mean so much to me. And then the ones that are watching from at home, know that I'm thinking of you. Thank you. And I just also like to give a shout out to my dad, Stephen Peters, who is here. Thank you for coming out here. He's always been one of my biggest supporters and fans, so thank you, Dad. And go HWAC, HWAC.
Okay, public participation is that this is an opportunity for the public to address the commission for an item that is not on the agenda. If you have a comment, please come forward to the microphone. Please come forward to the microphone so we can hear you. That is an agenda item.
Can you come back to that then?
Yes, you can.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, seeing no public participation, I'll close public participation and move on to the regular items of business. Our first item is something that we've been working on for about 6 months now, and we're proud to bring a conclusion to it. So this is a matter of appointing Chris Wilson as the next city manager and authorizing the employment agreement effective January 18th, 2022. We have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we appoint Chris Wilson as our next city manager and authorize an employment agreement effective January 18th, 2022.
Second?
Any comment from the public? Okay. Any comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to point out, we went through a very thorough process, and I'd like to thank Mark Wollenweber and Alex Alley, our former city managers, who helped guide us through that process. We had a lot of great folks apply, but I'm definitely pleased with our choice in Mr. Wilson, and I think he'll do an excellent job guiding our city into the future. And so I look forward to him starting on the 18th and working together in the years to come. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Welcome aboard, Chris. Would you like to make any comments?
Thank you, Mayor. I will just briefly would like to introduce my partner who came with me tonight of 24 years, Paulina Noboa Wilson, who's here with me this evening. I think this is the third council meeting in 19 plus years she's been to, so.
You haven't missed a thing.
Picked a great one. The Finster family, I know just left. I would just like to extend, I did send a text and get permission on behalf of the Village Council, the Village of Beverly Hills, to say welcome home, and what a great story that turned out to be. Not was, but turned out to be. Thank you for the opportunity. It has been a long process. Thanks to Mark and to Alex for all their guidance throughout this, and the guidance they're going to continue to give me as I probably burn their phones up over the next month or two, and maybe some of yours as well. The city of Huntington Woods, amongst my colleagues, has a great reputation, is a great place to work, has had for a long time. I've had the privilege of knowing Mark for almost 20 years, Alex the same. The Sullivan family I've known for the same period of time. And I'm very happy to be here. I'm happy to continue in the profession, and I thank you for the for the honor to serve this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 2 is a matter of authorizing, excuse me, authorizing the budget amendments mid-year. Tim?
So these are our mid-year budget adjustments through 6 months of the year based on our actual operations. The primary adjustments for general fund revenue, you can see are for state shared revenue. It's actually up and building permits are up, and it decreases in investment income and district court revenue. The primary expenditure adjustments are for public safety due to staff changeover. They have additional overtime. And we're also in the rec center is doing better than projected, so we're going to decrease the transfer from the general fund by $51,000.
Okay. Do we have a motion to
So
approve?
moved.
Second.
Any public comment? Any comments or questions from the commission?
Just one, Mr. Mayor. The public safety overtime, we've taken great steps to try to curtail that. Is this just a temporary issue they're experiencing with staffing, or do we see this as an ongoing overtime concern?
No, so they had a shortage of 4 staff members. They had 2 on medical leave, a retirement, and a resignation. So it's kind of the perfect storm in this first 6 months of the year. But we anticipate that going back down to normal levels going forward.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
One other thing to add, we have one of the officers that we replaced that's in the fire academy. He comes back to us able to work full-time and then in the upcoming months, and I think we're getting somebody back from maternity leave too shortly.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3 is a matter of authorizing the City of Huntington Woods 2022 refunding bonds.
Yeah, I can handle this. It was brought to our attention by Mike Gormley of Northland Securities. Mike couldn't be here tonight, but our bond counsel, Pat McGow, is here, and a representative from Northland. Normally, when you look at bond refunding, rates are certainly favorable. We wanted to do this quickly before the Fed has some adjustments, which they've announced already. Normally, when you look at these, it has to have a 2 to 3% advantage for us. This bond refunding is almost 5.96%. It's going to save us almost $50,000 over 7 years. Well worth doing. The appropriate resolutions are in front of you. Pat, do you want to say something? And we appreciate that this was, we're using existing bond counsel. We did not have to use a financial advisor for this. This will be privately marketed to our banks. Tim has some connections between us, we do, to make sure that we get good rates, and this is worst case analysis, so we hope to even do better than this. Go ahead, Pat.
I'll just add to that. So this was a bond issue the city did in 2007 for 11 Mile Road and improvements. It was 20 years. There's 5 years left on it. So the original rates were in the 4.5% range. They could be significantly lower today. So Mark identified that with doing this refinancing, the city would issue new bonds to pay off the old bonds, and the new bonds would have the exact same duration but at a lower interest rate. So the savings that are being projected include all issuance costs and costs related to the transaction. So that is an actual net savings to the city. Under state law, you have to have savings in order to be able to do this type of a refinancing. And as Mark indicated, the government finance officer's guidelines are you want to see at least a 2 to 3% present value savings. This right now is projected to be pretty close to 6%. So the idea of doing this, the last time the city did a bond issue was in April of 2020, and that was a new 20-year bond issue for various improvements. We went out and got a bond rating, did a competitive sale, rating presentations, et cetera. Because this is so short, only 5 years left and relatively small, this lends itself well for a placement to banks. And so what Northland Securities will do is do an RFP with some of the city's banking contacts as well as other banks that buy municipal bonds of this type, and then we'll take the lowest rate and be able to close and move forward in a really quick and cost-effective way to lock in those savings. So essentially the action tonight that you have before you is to approve the resolution to authorize the refunding bonds. It then delegates to the city manager, finance director to move forward with that type of a sale, and then award to the low bidder so that you can lock in the savings. And hopefully we could get this done within the next 45 to 60 days. So I'd be happy to answer any questions related to the resolution or the refinancing.
All right, let's start with a motion. Do we have a motion?
Seconded.
Any public comment? Any comments or questions for the commission? I think you're off the hook. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4 is a matter of entering into an agreement for the conversion of the streetlights to LED bulbs with DTE Energy at a cost of $58,166. Mark, do you want to?
Sure. This is an item that's the city has talked about for several years. It's been in the budget for the last couple of years. It makes sense to proceed with this. I know we had a couple of demonstration lights put up. I spoke to the expert who I've dealt with in the past at DTE, just to know that of almost all, they've converted in the southeast Michigan area almost over 95,000 streetlights, almost 100,000, and that takes their service territory. About 57% of them are now LEDs. She pointed out to me that the LEDs are a favorite. The current fixture that they're proposing is a favorite of the Public Safety Department because it allows them to determine true colors at night and provide better video quality if they were using their body cameras, etc. Currently, most of our lights are 100-watt high-pressure sodium. Some of this will make little sense because it didn't to me. I knew some of this, but with a color temperature of 2100 K, and they're in amber in color. They deliver lumens of 9,277. In 2021, as a pilot project here, they put 2 in. One was their standard 4000 K cool white color, and then a special order one, which was a cool white color with more of an amber hue. Both were LED fixtures. Both deliver the lumen outputs of 7,334, which is, of course, a couple thousand less than the current lights that we have in place now. And both generally deliver the same amount, or it will cost us the same amount in terms of energy to operate them. The city, we're recommending that we proceed with the Edison lights because of the following benefits. First of all, there's the annual cost savings. There's no need for us to procure or stock special order fixtures or the bulbs. It has a reduced lumen output, and some move is beneficial to public safety, as I mentioned earlier. Frankly, having looked at the lights, and this has been a response from a few folks that have mentioned it to me, you couldn't tell the difference between the two in the first place. And since they both save energy for us, and this is a payback that is for just over 4 years, if I remember correctly. So we're recommending going with the Edison fixtures for us to secure our own, having to stock them, having to have Edison make arrangements to put them in, or us to find somebody else to do it. does not make sense from an operational standpoint to our staff. I would say that this is for all of the street lights that are Edison-owned. We have approximately 70, give or take, a couple of the parking lot lights around our public buildings. Those we're in the process of securing private sector pricing to replace those, and those operate completely differently. But those are fixtures that we own. The other thing to mention here is there had been grant monies, zero interest loans with a forgivable percentage available from the Southeast Michigan Regional Energy Office. That group, we were represented on the board by our previous finance director, who's still a member of that board. So they're in the process of moving their operation to EcoWorks. So there's a slight chance that we may be also able to secure that same financing with a reimbursement for a payment earlier through them as a small grant. And then we'll bring back, or Chris will bring back to you in the future options on the lower parking lot lights, which we've asked for some pricing, and I'm still waiting to get that. And happy to answer any questions about this.
Do we have a motion to approve the?
So moved.
Olsman? No. Do we have a second?
Second.
Now is the opportunity for public participation. We have to have a motion on the floor before we can have discussion, sir.
Mark, that was very helpful. As you may be aware, in 1921, the standard set for these lights was changed. And the recommendation by every organized group, in the Lighting Engineering Society to Dark Skies International Association, et cetera, all recommend that all lighting should be less than 3,000 K, not 4,000 K, which is what the Detroit Edison is offering because it's cheaper for the Detroit Edison. And I want to stress why that's important, because there's clear evidence supported by the AMA, engineering societies, you name it, that these high-intensity white lights, LED white lights, above 3,000 K, create problems with glare, create problems of visibility for humans, including particularly aging humans, disrupts the biological cycles of many animals in terms of their reproductive cycle in particular, reduces safety on the road for both drivers and pedestrians, and basically is a mistake to get the 4,000 Kelvin lights. So the question, and in addition to the question of what the lights should be, whether they should be 4,000 or 3,000, everybody that knows anything about this now agrees, and I can give you any documentation you'd like, that it should be 3,000. You know, the other question is, will you have 7-pin connectors on these lights so that later, if you chose, you can actually control those lights and adapt the lighting as necessary, put motion sensors on if you want, that sort of thing? Do you know if they're using 7-pin connectors?
I do not know that they're using 7-pin connectors. However, many of the points that you mentioned, I am familiar with parts of those. Secondly, your comments would be probably best directed to the Public Service Commission. The city participated in the lawsuit when Edison, and Edison is, of course, not always customer friendly, but
indeed,
they attempted to raise the price for LEDs
exactly,
and contended that it was a demonstration price early on. But, you know, I would tell you that the Michigan Public Service Commission is the better place to raise some of the safety issues, some of which I've heard, some of which I have not seen the actual studies that support your conclusions.
Right.
And I would not necessarily agree with those conclusions because, one, I haven't seen the study, and two, if they've replaced about now almost 100,000 of these in southeast Michigan, under the auspices and approval of the rate structure that MPSC has provided for them, and certainly we all know that oftentimes Edison and the other utilities were able to put their folks friendly to their activities on the MPSC, but if there were safety issues and concerned, I've been involved in the replacement of streetlights like this in several communities, including St. Clair Shores, Grosse Pointe Shores, which owned our own streetlights, and replaced them, as well as in Grosse Pointe Woods. So I don't support your conclusions at this point. One, I'm familiar with some of the same comments. I've not seen the statistical data, but from an operational standpoint, I believe it is best for us to proceed with an Edison stock light rather than some other. And again, I've had this experience in St. Clair Shores. We purchased and put in our own lights along the nautical mile, and it was a pain in the neck, frankly, to stock both the poles and the fixtures when they needed to be replaced, instead of calling Edison and saying, hey, there's a street light out here. And from an operational standpoint, I don't see we have the room nor the staff to stock something that is not a standard fixture and replacement. But, you know, if Edison were to stock, and I'll certainly be happy to check with them with respect to the 7-pin connector, et cetera, that would allow us to provide further controls on those things. That is something I hadn't heard of before, but be happy to check on.
So let me just follow up. So these are standards that have been recently established by the international associations responsible for this, including one which is sponsored by the utility companies themselves. So these numbers are well established. I can get you whatever documentation you would like. The argument is that the use of higher Kelvin ratings is bad for the environment, light pollution, driving, et cetera, et cetera. Now, sure, go with the DTE package. It's the best package for them. I think, in fact, what you're suggesting is not that I, as a person, should go to the Public Service Commission, but that we do have the Michigan Street Lighting Coalition, which in fact overturned and opposed exactly what you said, that DTE was trying to raise the rates and lower the rates on high-pressure sodium lights. And that was stopped because of a coalition of cities, of which Huntington Woods is a member.
That's correct.
And one could, in fact, argue that if anybody is going to address this issue, it should be through that coalition of cities. This was a change that was made in 1921. Everybody from the AMA all the way to the engineering societies support these new standards. Obviously, it's cheaper for Detroit Edison to go with the package they're selling you. I would certainly urge you to make sure that in the future the city has the option of adding these features to make the lights more adaptable and more effective. Does this also mean that the city will be setting up the revolving energy fund that the consulting firm recommended? That the savings from this, the savings will go into that revolving energy fund that is in the city's energy plan?
No.
No. Okay.
If we were to participate with the Southeast Michigan Regional Energy Office and take their grant money at 0% loan and a forgivable, if that comes about, then we would be paying back at a zero interest loan minus a discount for paying early, and those funds would go back into that That's the same group that I mentioned that Tony Lehman was certainly continues as the treasurer for. So only if that's the case would we take advantage of that project.
So the energy plan that recommended doing that is not going to, that's not going to happen. You're not going to create a revolving energy fund for?
Only if, as I said, only if we participate through SEMRO in their program.
If you're saving $16,000, $20,000 a year, you're not going to put that into a revolving fund for future environmental
That would be up to
improvements?
the city commission and in terms of its budget discussion.
The city commission
to
did
decide.
approve the energy plan of 2019, right?
Look, I'm happy to try to answer your questions
Sure.
with the information that I have. I'm not here to debate you. And
Nope,
if you
not
want
a
to
problem.
provide me any background information, I'll be happy to take a look at it as well as forward it to the city commission.
I would certainly encourage the city and the commission to actually look at this a little bit more carefully before you close the deal. There's much data out there. There are many recommendations by very legitimate engineering and other organizations, environmental organizations. Seems to me it may be worth taking your time to just double check this before you go forward. But obviously, that's up to you guys. Thank you.
And be happy to receive any material that you have or any of your sources.
Any other public comment?
Hi, my name is Mary Maslin Cooper. I live at 13122 Talbot. Just to piggyback on the new lights, my block was where one of the new lights were set up at, was at Berkeley and Talbot. And the family that lived at Berkeley and Talbot had to have the city put shields on that light because it was so disruptive to the interior of their home. And I know that we are not trying to light something as large as like Woodward or the Nautical Mile or anything like that. But I think that we might want to really consider whether or not we want to have that bright a light on our corners. Because I lived close to it, and you could read a newspaper under that in the night, because I walk at 10:30 every night, and I appreciate having the corner lights, but I didn't appreciate the volume of light that was coming out of that particular corner. And I don't think that the neighbors did either, and I don't know if anybody solicited information from those folks who lived on the test areas. I don't know if there was any feedback given to you guys, if you know if people loved them, hated them. And I do appreciate the city is trying to save money, and I do appreciate that the LED lights are probably more energy efficient. But the question is at the expense of maybe the quality of life of the people who live around them. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Any comments or questions from the commission?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry I didn't catch your name. Mary, that was my first question to Mark. I would really appreciate more feedback from the residents that have lived near the 3,000 versus 4,000 K. And one of the questions I had for Mark was there any carbon difference between the two, outputs? I drove by it. I couldn't tell the difference, honestly. So I'm not sure, what my feedback for that would be, but I think they've been there for a long time. I would really love to hear more from the residents that have lived there and had to experience it. That's all.
Commissioner Jenks?
Yeah, the only question I have was, we were asked to look at a 4,000 and a 3,000 with the idea of selecting the 3,000, which, as far as I understand in this proposal, we're not proposing the 4,000, we are proposing the 3,000.
No.
We are proposing the 4,000?
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right. I thought we were going to a lower level. All right.
Mr. Mayor. I know that when these were initially installed, I think Amy was still our city manager, and I remember looking at them, it seems like maybe more than a year ago initially, and I didn't notice much difference either. I don't recall, frankly, if at the time she solicited resident feedback. It seems to me like she may have, but I don't recall what it was, because it was maybe a year or two ago when we initially started going down this road. I'm not opposed to tabling the item to look at it in a little more detail and get some more information and solicit resident feedback. In the end, it may not change the outcome, but at least I think maybe it's worth getting feedback from those nearby residents, and then determining about the connectability of future modifications to these lights, if that's an available option for us. So I don't see an issue punting on this right now and bringing it back to our next meeting after we've taken a little bit of a closer look at it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I side with Commissioner Rosell on that, only for the issue of the resident input. I'm not so sure it's going to be a representative sample, given the number of lights that we have in the city. I'm sure that, depending on where they're installed there, we're going to find residents who would find them to be a vast improvement over what we currently have, and others who are probably going to say, I don't like it. But I think, given the fact that there's been some concern raised about resident input, and I emphasize that because with regard to the other issues, I would defer to the city manager. But I think with respect to the issue of the resident input, I think that's something that we should look at. I concur with Commissioner Rosell.
Okay, it sounds like we want to take at least enough time to get some input from the community. Could I ask that the map that was given to the City Commission, I do believe actually it was put out in an e-blast probably almost a year ago now, but let's do that again. Put something on our website. If there's any other ways of alerting residents to take a look at these two lights and give us some feedback, whether it's directed to the city manager or however you want to collect that information.
We can certainly do that, and any material that Mr. Stack has, be happy to take a look at that and forward it as well.
And the feedback from the residents who are closest to where these are currently placed, if we could solicit them either by letter or by telephone. And then the connector for the light as well, if we could reach out to DTE on that. So, I mean, we have a motion on the floor. If they withdraw it, that's fine, or I'll bring a new motion to table it to our next meeting, Mr. Mayor, whichever you prefer.
A motion to table would be good.
All right, I'll move to table this until the City Commission's next regular meeting.
Seconded.
Mr. Mayor,
We're done with discussion once the motion to table's been on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Sorry about that.
I do believe there may be alternative funding.
Okay. Item number 5 is a matter of consideration of the adoption of an ordinance to amend the City Code of the City of Huntington Woods, Chapter 40, Article 9, Sustainable Design and Environmental Standards, to replace it in its entirety, Section 9.03, Solar Structures and Easements, and to provide penalties for violations thereof. This would be the first reading of this ordinance. Do we have a motion? Do we want an explanation first?
Yeah, I can discuss this. This was an issue that the Environmental Sustainability Committee had asked to be moved forward. It was sent to the Planning Commission. They had a lot of discussion on this issue. Hank, as you know, who handles the Planning Commission, is out of town. and unavailable to be here this evening. I think this boils down to, there was also some survey data collected some time ago before I came about this, and people certainly are in favor of solar ordinance and making it available. The concerns that I've heard raised in Hank and I's discussion, and that with Carol from the city attorney's office, have been where the placement of these panels could be, and placing them on the front, which this ordinance would allow placement anywhere on, I think, the front and the sides, if I understood it properly, has raised some concerns with respect to the current the proper placement for these are a south-facing, so you get the sun through a portion of the day. That, of course, means homes on the north side would have to put them in the front of their house, and that raised some concerns that I think the Planning Commission dealt with as well. So, and that's this would. As I said earlier, I think allow them to be placed pretty much anywhere on person's property, including some ground placement and stuff. So,
Okay, for the sake of discussion, do we have a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, since I do want to discuss the item, I will move the first reading of the ordinance for purposes of discussion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there any public comment?
Hi, my name is David Egan. A few of the members from the Environmental Advisory are here tonight, and I just wanted to clarify that there was no part of the ordinance that said that it was ground placement. It's just on the roof. So I just wanted to clarify that so that everybody had that information. Thank you.
Hi there. My name's Julie Petrick, and I am a member of the Environmental Sustainability Committee. I am a 30-year resident of the city of Huntington Woods. I love this city more than anything, and I have wanted to give you a little bit more information about the proposed ordinance as well. This has been in the works for quite some time, and it's been for discussion probably 2 or 3 times with the Planning Commission, and ultimately the Commission did move it out for your review. And I believe, and I'm not certain, but I think that they recommended approval of it. And the other thing is that there were 2 surveys that went out for the city of Huntington residents. And also a point of clarification, solar panels have been permitted within the city for quite some time. The only thing that this ordinance does is allow front-facing panels for people who, like myself, have a north side house, south side facing. And it permits solar panels if you can demonstrate that you would have a 10% difference in efficiency between the rear facing and front facing. There are also some aesthetic requirements that require that the panels be anti-reflective and that they also be the same color of the roof, and that if you have a flat roof, it cannot extend a certain amount ahead of time, and those things are all written in the ordinance. I will also say that I'm very strongly in favor of this, and just a short little anecdote about it. You know, we all can recognize after this year of extreme weather patterns that the time is now to do everything that we can to reduce our carbon footprint, and especially in the city of Huntington Woods, where we have advanced ourselves as a progressive city that wants to do everything that it can to save the environment for our children. And I bring up children because my daughter, who is now 21 years old, for the last 5 years, every time I've asked her what she wanted for her birthday, was to put solar panels on the roof. And I have not been able to do that because of the ordinance in place right now, which prohibits me from doing that. The other reason I started out this discussion with saying that I love the city of Huntington Woods is that this is a common feeling. We've moved here because we love the city. It's a beautiful city. We walk around this city, and our residents, we have the most beautiful city in Michigan, and our residents, I believe, can be trusted to put in place solar panels that will be consistent with the aesthetics of our city and make it even more beautiful. And there are so many configurations out there that are aesthetically beautiful and fit within the character of our neighborhood. And the final point that I would say is that it is an issue of equity, because the people who have houses on the south side of the street can take advantage of the benefits of solar panels. And I cannot do that without this ordinance. It would not be economically feasible for me to be able to reap the benefits of creating a cleaner environment plus any economic savings. And, should the power go out, which is not uncommon, I would like to be able to be in a position where I can have and make my own energy. So thank you very much for listening to my comments, and I think there may be a few more comments as well.
Good evening. My name is Ben Falick, and I chair the Environmental Sustainability Committee. My address is 13129 Borgman. I would thank everyone who's here from the Environmental Sustainability Committee, and as well as all the people who aren't here who were involved in this process. We did spend a lot of time really rigorously working through this with the Planning Commission over multiple meetings, and kept sort of iterating and approaching it and seeking expert advice from the private sector. This really is now a market-driven energy space. And that, as well as looking at other cities, and I think it's really reflected in the verbiage of the proposed ordinance. I had an opportunity to reread it over the course of this meeting, and I think it speaks for itself very well in terms of the spatial constraints on the roof. Very clearly states that ground-mounted and facade-mounted solar energy devices are prohibited, and it carves out the historic districts as being governed by the Historic District Commission review. So it has been probably 2.5 years now that we've been working on this, and the technology and the aesthetic appeal, and I think the mainstreaming or normalizing of this in just those 2 or 2.5 years has really moved forward. So this isn't cutting edge anymore. It's something that there are a lot of cities in Michigan and on the coast and everywhere in between that have adopted this, and I think empowering residents who want to invest really substantially, $15,000, $30,000 currently, in doing this would be a very, very wise decision that would reflect a very inclusive and deliberative process that brought us to this point. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Aaron Reddish, 25447 Wareham. So I'm speaking as a citizen, not as a member. But I have been involved in this ordinance. And as Ben and the others said, this is something that the committee's been working on for over 2 years. We did 2 surveys, as you probably know. We did a survey that received over, I believe, 90% support. And the survey specifically asked residents if they would support a solar ordinance with front-facing panels. And then the city did its own survey, and it found something over 76, I think, %. Again, saying front-facing. So that should not be an issue. This is something I cannot take advantage of, but I want to make sure that my neighbors are able to. This is going to be a small change, but with an amazingly significant kind of symbol. All that the ordinance is really asking is to allow residents to put solar panels on the front. That's it. You're not going to have solar panels up and down. I mean, I hope that's the case, but it's just not going to happen. What you are going to say to the residents and to all of our neighbors is that we support environmental programming, period. Pleasant Ridge did this. We based this ordinance on Pleasant Ridge, and it's much more restrictive than Pleasant Ridge. They've had some solar panels, but now we are the only community that does not allow solar panels on the front. And that's not exactly the position that we, as an environmentally leaning, progressive city, want to be. This is not just for us, but for people moving into the city. They're going to look for environmentally sustainable communities. And this is just a small step in that direction. So I'll leave with that. Thank you.
Hi, Bridget McKinley, 26674 Humber Street. I'm here with my family today. I'm no longer a member of the Sustainability Committee, but I just wanted to express my strong support of this change in this ordinance. As was mentioned by other members, we have conducted multiple surveys with the city and found very broad support and believe this is really important to increase choice for our residents and choice that really reflects our values and our priorities as a community. In addition, in looking into this, I have done a little bit of research, not as much as maybe I should, but research in terms of how this impacts home values, because I know the commission is interested in things like aesthetics and how these things do impact that. And overwhelmingly, cities that support solar panels and those homes that actually have solar panels actually increase value over time, outweighing the cost of those solar panels. So the housing unit and the cost of those houses and what the value is within those communities does raise over time as the community starts to adopt these sorts of measures. So that's all I have to say. I think everyone else summed it up well, but just wanted to make sure my family was represented too. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, I'll move it back to the City Commission. Commissioner Rozelle, you want to start?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a couple of questions. The first one was, do we know how many homes potentially are impacted by, you mentioned where they're in the situation where it's more advantageous to place it on the front of the house versus the rear of the home? I mean, is it half the homes in the city, a third of the homes? Was that ever looked at by the Planning Commission in determining, how many folks are really impacted by this?
I don't think I don't know if the Planning Commission looked at it with Hank not being able to be here, but my guess is, except for those that have a direct on the south side of the street, they can put them on the back. Those on the north side cannot put them where they're most efficient on the south side without putting them on the front of the house.
Right.
Of course, it depends on the roof style too. So.
Sure. And then my other question, looking at Standard 5, where it discusses the roof-mounted devices and the 10% decrease in energy production. It wasn't clear to me how that's determined or who makes that determination. So, I mean, one thing we've certainly learned over time is that our ordinances, we got to be real clear about who's doing what and how it's being done. So how would that be arrived at, the determination of the 10% decrease in energy production, and who's ultimately the decider of that?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. My guess would be it's kind of like noise ordinance issues where the device being put in would be provided, and there's some standard information that's provided by the particular vendor involved, like it is if you're putting in the side yard air conditioner or a generator or something like that. I'm sure that there are standards or tests that the manufacturer of the particular product, the solar ordinance, would provide that information to the homeowner, and then the city would have to evaluate, does that make sense, et cetera, to do that.
I would be curious, I mean, I know our attorney's here, would you recommend that be, maybe we tighten that up a bit or add some clarity there? So it's just, I don't want there to be confusion amongst the residents. I don't want there to be confusion amongst city officials. I want it to be very clear how that would work.
Right, thank you, Commissioner. Yes, I think that's an area that would be amenable to some clarification. That's something we could do in time for the second reading. I think situated in the zoning ordinance, my presumption is that it would be the intent that the zoning administrator would ultimately sign off on that determination. But I think your point about exactly how we know that 10% or more decreases come about is something that we could clarify if we have the answer to it, and report back to you.
No problem, thanks. And number 9, standard number 9 does have a typo. The word solar is misspelled at the bottom of page 2, so I just wanted to point that out as well. So, you know, as I was bringing in the recycling container and trash cans today, I happened to see a few neighbors doing the same thing. I asked them what they thought. They were not in support of it, but I know that based on the feedback that the committee's done and surveys, that certainly there are residents in the city that are in support of this. So I do feel like, you know, there's definitely a divide in how residents feel about it, but, you know, it's our job to discuss it and make a decision, and that's what we'll do. So thank you.
So my number one concern would be aesthetics. And something was mentioned in one of the comments that I'm not quite sure is in the ordinance, saying that the solar panels would be the same color as the roof. I do see in here where it says the frame shall be the same color as the collector surface. But I don't know that that means it's the same color as the roof. And I do think that's an important aesthetic issue. So I'm assuming the collector surface is the panel, the frame is holding it. If they're red and the roof is black, I'm going to have an aesthetic issue. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that. And then item number 10 talks about, 11, the batteries. Item number 11 talks about the storage batteries. Once again, I'm not sure how big these are, but is it something that could, it doesn't say that it has to be placed in the backyard, but I can't imagine we would want a big box in the front yard. So does that need to be addressed?
Mr. Mayor, first of all, I want to thank the Environmental Committee and Planning Commission for taking a look at this. Climate change is real. This is a real problem, right? But this is, I think, complicated. I have just a lot of questions. First, same question about the 10%. Who, is this an industry standard? Is there a certification process? My second comment and question is, I reviewed the master plan draft, and there wasn't very much in there about solar panels, and because this is both an environmental sustainability and design aesthetics issue combined into one package, I'm wondering if we could get some feedback from the consultants on, one, why wasn't it included when they were doing this community-wide outreach on the master plan? And two, what are some of the, I think somebody mentioned other cities like Pleasant Ridge, have we done benchmarking in looking at not only the policy direction, but also the details of how these ordinances look? Which brings me to my last question. In thinking about installing air conditioners and even fences, right? Usually you have to get your neighbor's approval, depending on the situation. And for consistency purposes, if this ordinance is saying we are allowing this on the front facade, are we also going to look at how we apply these types of policies across the board for consistency? So those are more questions. I think what's becoming very clear is that we all have a lot of questions that need further clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jenks?
Yeah, this has been a project that's been going very, very strongly for 2 to 3 years. The one piece that's missing, and I hope it can be clarified, is the color match, because it's always been, and the dullness. But the whole idea of having neighbors double check and approve a solar panel, but not approve siding that goes on a brick house, to me is crazy. There is no intent in this concept of trying to downgrade either the house you put the panels on or any of your neighbors. But when someone tells me, because I live in the south side, put it on the back of your house, and I have a giant tree that was saved before my house was built 70 years ago. I am penalized because the person that built my house didn't clear cut the lot, and we have fought against clear cutting as well. I hope that this ordinance can be adjusted, and some of it, really the 10% would normally be what is done by Hank. I just hope we can move this forward. I know of a couple 2.5 years ago that moved out of the city because they could not adjust their electric so that it would be, if not 100% solar, at a great extent solar. And they moved on the basis of values. It was a rabbi and her husband. We're afraid of lots of things, but we need to get past being afraid and make some decisions that put us in the lead. We consider ourselves the best city, and we then need to adopt best practices rather than just delay.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to jump in real quick. This isn't about being scared of anything. As I understood Commissioner Elder, frankly, what she's talking about is if a resident can't place an air conditioner in the rear of their property or within the setback of the side yard and they need to place it in the side of the home, they need the neighbor's permission. And she's saying, does it make sense to apply a similar philosophy with this? It has nothing to do with siding or brick or what you like or what you don't like. It's if the air conditioner can't be placed here and you're going to place it in your side yard near your neighbor's home or near your neighbor's side door or near your neighbor's bedroom window, they need to sign off on it. And would it make sense to apply this neighborly global concept in our ordinances to this. I think that's all. I'm not speaking for her, but I think that's what she was saying. Something to do with siding or brick or being scared. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Olson?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. As the commissioner liaison to the Planning Commission last year, I participated in the discussions that went on about this topic, and I can tell you that the person who is not here tonight, Mr. Berry, because he's attending to a family health situation out of state, probably knows from a institutional perspective in Huntington Woods more about the topic than just about anyone. I know from talking to him that there have been very few requests over time for solar panels, period, in the city. I know that the Environmental Committee has worked very hard on this. I know that there have been surveys that have been done. And as I expressed to the Planning Commission, I did not vote on this because I said at that time that that would be coming here, and I did not believe it was proper for me to take a position, a voting position on it at the Planning Commission. But I will say again, the aesthetic component of this is significant. The driving around Berkeley and seeing some of these solar panels, the way they're mounted, they, in my opinion, they are, there's no other word to use for them. They're ugly as can be. It is not clear to me that there's no impact on the value of property. We've heard from the proponents tonight, and this feels very eerily to me reminiscent of the tree ordinance in 2014, or 13, I believe, where we agreed to that tree ordinance that promoted a wave of discontent in the city. Now, I'm not suggesting that the two are the same, but I'm suggesting that having been there for that vote and having voted for it, because we had many well-intentioned residents there telling us why it was good and why it would be good for the city and so forth, and then watching what happened afterwards, I remember that, as they say. So I think because Hank Berry is not here to address this, as I would prefer, because we've not heard, in my judgment, enough information about the impact. I understand the strong sentiment about conservation and about energy and so forth, but there's a negative component to this. There's got to be another side to this where somebody's going to say, absolutely not the case or whatever. And I, even after sitting on the Planning Commission and listening to this last year, and it was very thoughtful discussion and very careful discussion, I do not recommend moving forward with this ordinance tonight. There are multiple questions that need to be answered. Commissioner Elder's points are very valid about if you're going to put this up on your house across the street, does your neighbor have to say okay? That is a very valid point because it exists with regard to generators, it exists with regard to air conditioners, it exists with regard to many things where you have two neighbors juxtaposed against one another. And I am not sold on the idea that the residents are going to think that this is a really good idea. I'm not doubting the sincerity or the knowledge or the capability of the people that are proposing it and advocating on behalf of it. I know many of them very well, and they're very capable, but I am not convinced that we're in a position to vote on this tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Mayor, I made the motion, to discuss this, and I do think we do have a lot of questions, and our attorneys indicated that perhaps a second review and tightening up of some areas and the points you've made and Commissioner Elder and Olsman have made, are well taken. So I don't have an issue removing my motion, and again, just like we did with the LED, let's take a second look, have legal counsel look at it, our planner look at it, and bring this back after it's been reviewed. There's no reason to rush it. There was no reason to rush the LED issue. There's no reason to rush this. Let's make sure we get it right. And so I don't have an issue withdrawing my motion, Mr. Mayor, on the first reading.
You have to accept that, Commissioner Jenks. You were the second.
I'll withdraw, but I'd point out this is a first reading.
And I'll just add that normally when we have a first reading, we're not making as many potential changes as we're talking about here. So it's good. It's a good reasoning to have our first reading that's a little closer to what we would eventually want to adopt.
I agree.
Any other comments? Do we have a motion to table this?
We need to if he's withdrawing his motion?
Yeah, it's an agenda item, so I've got to do something with it.
All right, then move to table.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I guess you get to dump this one on Chris Wilson's desk on how to proceed.
Nothing personal, we can hang it on the front of his house.
Moving on to the city manager's report.
Sure. First of all, there was a notice, and I received a call from actually Mr. Stack about this, that this meeting was properly noticed, but was not in the calendar portion of the agenda that Jane, I think, does. So Heidi's made those arrangements to this and other committees. We should put them on the calendar portion as well. Second, there'll be an upcoming meeting with our engineers to talk about the 2022-23 projects. As you, Commission, may recall, because I mentioned this previously, there's a petition from, I think it was a block in Talbot, about paving their street, again, the engineers can come back and you'll have more information as to where that, along with other projects, ranked based on the PACER rating. And Tim pointed out in his report that the Transportation Economic Development Fund monies that the city applied for were not granted. I think we asked for paving of Borgman and some portion on Lincoln, but we were turned down for that grant, so that will tie into what projects the engineers can recommend from the millage that was passed previously. Also, we are exploring, and this is something Amy Sullivan took the first as an example, some customer service training. We have a number of new people working at the counter as well as some other staff. City Hall, Rec Center will have a new library person. So customer service training that we can provide through, and Amy had left information. She attended one that Zingerman's in Ann Arbor had put on. When I spoke to her earlier today, she highly recommends that. So that's something Tim and staff will be looking at doing in the upcoming months. The library reception for Ann, because of COVID issues, has been canceled for this Sunday. Hopefully will be rescheduled. And along those lines, Chris and I have talked. We'll be assisting a little bit, along with Shelley and some other librarians. Joe and I served together on the Library Network board for a number of years, and I'm currently still the board chair, so I do believe I have some knowledge about library directors, and we've had, I think, 5 or 6 applicants for it. So Shelley and I, members of the existing board, Library Advisory Board, will be looking at those applications and hopefully proceeding to do interviews and make specific recommendations to Chris and ultimately to the City Commission about a new library director. We had a couple of residents call and complain, and I spoke to the Berkeley city manager today about, they have developed a process for how they were going to allocate up to 3 potential licenses for medical marijuana distribution. One of the places they were looking at, according to the resident, was a building across from us on 11 Mile Road. The manager assured me that they have not made a decision on those. They had 5 applicants for 3 potential slots. There were 3 different ones on 11 Mile. 2 of them, I think, were further up and not across from us directly. But he had told me that they will be looking to provide notice for site plan review at an upcoming that residents here would get a notice of, but no decisions have been made so far. I have an upcoming meeting, I think it's early next week, with the Ferndale manager. We were talking about equipment sharing as well as potential space sharing, things in the future. As I mentioned earlier on the lighting issue, the Southeast Michigan Energy Office, Tony was the treasurer for, they're in the process of restructuring with EcoWorks, so there may be the opportunity to apply for a grant as we proceed, if we proceed with that project. I know Tim mentioned, and I mentioned last time, the money, the child development grant that Tim put together based on the rec center. We've yet to hear, but we applied for almost, well, $166,000 and change, which could result in both the staff hazard pay for those full-time and part-time employees based on the state standard, some tuition credits for those that participated in the program, and possibly a generator for this building so that we could use it when there are disasters like last summer when we were out at, both here in the library, out of service. One of the things that I mentioned to some of the commission, you know, it's coming back to work here after 30-some years and seeing the Gillum Center. Of course, I was here nicely. I appreciated being invited when it was dedicated for Ron and Shirley Gillum, who are friends from, they were on the, Ron was on the commission when I was hired back in 1978, I think. But it would be nice to have, and I'm certainly happy to purchase my own. There are a number of city officials, department heads, city managers that are not recognized in any place. I know we try to recognize important people from this city, plus those that have purchased the brick. But it'd be neat to do this and have order bricks for, you know, the City Hall plaque. The manager at that time was, I think, here in the 50s, and his assistant, Fred Yaki, became the manager, and I worked for Fred when he was the manager in Plymouth and I was the assistant. Others, for example, Jim Stewart, our public safety director, when I worked here a couple times, he was the acting manager. Steve Fairman lives here, lived in, I think, 3 different houses in the city and stuff. So, and I think it's an appropriate way to honor people that have worked for this city, and I said I'm happy to pay, but I would hope the commission would suggest to staff that we do that and maybe invite those folks that are some members of their families still around to be honored. And so one of the first things I did, no one knew, well, they asked the question, does anybody know who Robert Onett Drive was named after? And he was the DPW director when I first worked here. And at some point, over cocktails, I'll tell you some funny stories about that. But I thought that'd be a nice way. And as I said, I'm happy to. If I'd known about buying a brick before, I would have done that as well. And finally, since this is my last commission meeting, and there's some carryover business, which I get to dump on the staff, I certainly want to thank the mayor and the members of the commission for allowing me to come back. And this was always considered the home where my kids grew up. They went to Burton. My oldest son graduated from Berkeley High. My youngest moved with us to St. Clair Shores and went to Lakeview, and sadly then went on to Michigan State, as well as getting his master's from Wayne State. But my eldest son is a geographic mapper, works for a company in Troy, lives in Berkeley, so I'm able to bunk in with him when I'm there. But I want to thank the commission for inviting me back. I did get to visit the people who bought my house, and they gave me a tour, and they were so generous about that. As I was telling probably each of you, all the rooms were smaller than I remembered them and stuff, but it's nice to come back. I want to thank the staff for their help and support for the months that I've been here. They've been helpful with background on issues, and I pretty much appreciate that. And I think there are a number of projects that we were able to get underway so that I, again, appreciate the opportunity to be here, but we move forward in a number of areas, and there's still more things to do that we'll be all briefing Chris about when he starts. And it was also fun to see residents and friends that I knew from many years ago, as well as meeting new residents and folks in the few months that I've been here, which I guess has now been about all 6. But I want to thank everyone in the community for visiting, for coming in, and it just shows what a great community this is, supported by its residents over the years. So I thank each of you, and Chris, I'm available, as I've already told him, for anything that he needs. And I know Alex and I will take him to lunch in maybe a month or so. Let him get his feet wet first, and then he can start making lists of questions that he can always call about. So thank you, and that's all I had.
Before I ask if there's any questions of the City Commission for the city manager, I would like to say, it was back in June of last year when I called up Mark and told him about Amy Sullivan's retirement due to health issues, and asked him if he would have any interest in helping us out for a couple of months. And here we are, over 6 months later. I can't tell you how much all of us appreciate your dedicated work, your willingness to come back and help us through this, and all your help along with Alex's in getting us to the point where we're at right now. So just thank you for everything you do.
Well, I just say thank you, and it's a community that's well worth it. So,
any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I would echo your comments, but importantly, too, one of the things that Mr. Wollenweber mentioned was this issue with Berkeley. And I do think if you could pass this along to Mr. Wilson and Mr. Mayor, if you could also exert your influence. I do not want this establishment located across the street from a city park. One of the reasons we didn't allow them in our city is because within all the commercial property is either near a school or park, and it just didn't make any sense. And now they're going to do it and stick it directly across the street from one of our parks. And we have no legal say in it. But, our two cities have gotten along fairly well for a long time, and we work together on a lot of things. And I would hope that if they'd like to continue that spirit of cooperation and working together, that they're not going to do that. So, Mr. Mayor, if you could work with the mayor of Berkeley and you can let Mr. Wilson know the issue that these residents have raised that are in that area and concerned, I'd certainly appreciate that.
Will do.
All right.
That's true, but also I think the important thing to recognize about what Joe just said is legally, it's not, it would have to be by agreement and consent. And I mean, it's an empty pop gun to say that we've gotten along great up till now. I mean, it's an issue that's come along in the past few years, and it is true that we're very limited in where we could allow that type of facility, which is why we didn't do it. But I mean, I've seen some of the resident comments on next door and things like that, and it's just, there's Berkeley, we're Huntington Woods. It has to be by agreement and consent. I don't see the legal arsenal to do anything about it, so.
All right. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.